friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And real quickly, I wanted to cover a point. It's not so much a question, though I'm sure some people do wonder this, those who even know about this little trick. And I wanted to let people know why I do not use this method when it comes to blending things and then storing them in regular mouth quart jars. So people have said this many times, and the most recent one was where I was showing how to make a fermented fruit smoothie. And when it comes to storing anything that is a liquid, whether it be in the refrigerator or for canning, that's when I prefer the regular mouth jar. And several people have pointed this out to me because, obviously they assumed I didn't know this because they never see me use this method. But yes, many of your blenders, the blade and the bottom part there will fit perfectly as far as screwing on there to a regular mouth jar. And so you can set that down into your blender and blend stuff. Well, I've known this for many years, but here's the reason why I don't do this and why I personally do not recommend it. And that is because the jar right here, the rim of the jar, though the threading and the size of this base may fit perfectly on this way, the problem with the rim is that it is much smaller than the thicker rim of your pitcher on your blender, especially if you're talking a good heavy glass blender like this one. And I only use glass. And also, you're going to be looking at the fact that the jar is going to weigh a lot less than the pitcher itself. So here is something that happened to me twice, and then I stopped doing this method. Even though I was being very careful, especially if you're talking about anything like mixing something that's slippery like soap, like making your own homemade laundry soap, to mix it directly in a jar like this, I definitely do not recommend it for that. But this could happen with just about anything. And let's say you've got coconut oil or anything in there. If it gets on that rubber gasket, what's going to happen as soon as you turn on that blender is that rubber gasket, because the weight of the jar and the thinness of the rim is not sufficient to hold that gasket in place. Even if you put that on there real tight, that gasket can slip into the blender, and then of course it's going to get chopped all to pieces. Now that did happen to me. Thankfully, the good news is that gaskets are pretty inexpensive, at least when I bought these. I don't remember what I paid for these, maybe $10 for I think a dozen of them. So I had some backups, because even though I decided I wasn't going to use that method anymore, I thought, you know what, it's still a good idea to have a bunch of backups. So I bought a whole pack of them like that, just in case for some reason something like that happens again. And when you're talking rubber gaskets, those are things that wear out anyway, so it's not a bad idea. Just like if you have a canner that has a rubber gasket, unlike the All-American canner, which is one of the things that makes it great, is it doesn't have a rubber gasket that needs replacement, but other canners do, or even the rubber gaskets that go with your Tatler or Harvest Guard lids. Eventually those will need to be replaced, but they can last for many years. So, but it's still a good idea to have backups of anything like that, even if you're not going to do that. But again, and I realize some people are going to come in here and say, well, I've been using it that way for years and never had that happen to me. And I believe you. But there's also some variances. Every blender, the shape of it and the weight of it and the thickness is very likely going to be a little bit different. Thus, the gasket that goes with it, the cap, the base, the blade can be a little bit different thickness or shape, that even if it fits on your regular mouth jar, it may work all the time for you and you never have a problem, or it may not. So if you don't mind stocking up on a bunch of gaskets just in case, sure, go ahead and give it a try just to see if it's going to work for you. But for me personally, I don't do that anymore. To me, I would rather use my blender. It's not that hard to wash out. In fact, the hardest part to wash up is this one anyway. And then just go ahead and pour it into my quart jar and store that in the refrigerator. So it's only one extra thing to wash that is not at all hard to wash, because it's open on both ends, it's wide, it's easier to wash out than the regular mouth jar is anyway, even though my hands are actually small enough to get in there. So yeah, that's one nice thing about having small hands. So anyway, that's my quick tip. I'm not telling anyone don't do it. I'm just saying this is why I don't do it and why I don't recommend it. But you're welcome to try it if you want and take a chance. Just make sure before you do, you have some backup gaskets on hand. And I will link to the ones I have down below for my blender, which is an Oster. It's just your classic Oster style. I love this blender. I even have a backup because these things, mine has lasted for I don't even know how many years now. And I've bought expensive fancy blenders that lasted me for 6 months. And I said never again. So I stick with Oster. It's my favorite. All right, well there you go. Now some of you may have learned something new. You probably didn't know you could even do that in the first place. And the rest of you will know why I don't. All right, well thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.